Welcome back, Warrior Family.
Woohoo!
Thanks for being here with us.
Yes.
We are very excited about this week's topic, or at least I know I'm very excited about this week's topic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for all you Warrior listeners, usually Abby and I throw to each other with like, hey, I had this thing come up and I think it'd be a great topic for us to discuss on the pod. And then we, go over the logistics and come up with the outline and the questions and all the things. And so this one was one of mine. And it's just been the kind of thing that's, I want to say it's a newer anxiety and it's communication. Now, we did a communication episode a while back, but we didn't really dive into the pressures surrounding communication, like the methods of communication, how many methods there are, what's acceptable form of communication for work people versus friends and family. What are boundaries like with communication with those people? Like, so we thought that it'd be worth, or I thought that it'd be worth re-exploring, and Abby certainly agreed. So that is what we're going to be chatting about with you all today. Thinking about the way we communicate and all the methods in which we communicate in, and sometimes the pressure that I know we can feel surrounding all those things I just mentioned.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like the best ways to communicate for some people may not be the best for other groups of people.
Right.
How do you navigate learning what everybody's desires are when it comes to communication? Again, very, very dependent on who you're talking to. Right. And what form you're talking to them in. So,
and how are people going to interpret non-communication or lack of communication or slow replies to communication? Like there's so many different pressures and no clear agreements with everyone about the expectations of communication and when and where and how.
Yeah, it's like we have all these contracts in our life, right? It's like you have contracts with work, you have contracts, if you get married or, someone dies, there are contracts. Everything's all about like being really clear and explicit. It's like, this is what the reality is. But I feel like there's never no one's ever talking about what the expectations are, even in a work environment or in like a legal environment or something. There's no like, here's a class you should take surrounding best practices for communication in this office versus this office with this person versus this person. And everybody's needs are going to be different. Like I know you and I have talked about like in past pods, but also just in our conversation as friends, it's like, if you send a text to someone and they don't respond to you in say a quote unquote reasonable amount of time, that might bring on some strong feelings or some worry or anxiety. And I think you were talking about an ex of yours or something. And I had brought up a story in another episode where, I was pretty young and my mom went to pick my dad up from the train. Right. And in my head, I knew that she would be gone or they'd be gone for maybe 7 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes and no more than that. And so when they didn't come back for 20 minutes, I was freaking out. Right. And then, there were no cell phones. Right. But like, there was no discussion either of like, if I'm running late, here are some of the reasons why I might not, I may not be back. Right. And so it's just like, it's so complicated.
Right. It's complicated because also like in those two examples, like in one of them, a lack of communication is like, oh my God, did I do something wrong? Are they upset with me? And in the other, it's like, oh my God, did something happen? Right. Exactly. And both of them are just fear-based when we don't get the response in the timely manner that we have set up in our minds.
Totally. Yes, I agree. So I'm going to get us kicked off today.
Yeah, start it off. Let's hear about this.
Growing up as a child in the 80s and 90s, communication felt pretty easy because you had only a couple of choices. You talk to a person in person, face to face, or you are on a landline. For all our Gen Z listeners or Zoomers or whatever, right? A landline is something with a cord or something that is attached to a little box that's also plugged into the wall. That thing charges and then you take it off and it's got buttons on it. I'm really not trying to sound condescending, I swear. Oh, I know it's coming off like that, so I apologize. So the greater point is that it felt pretty easy. You have these couple of modes of communication. You know that if a person's not home, you can't talk to them because you can only call their landline, right? If you're calling someone at the office, they don't answer. It's probably because they're no longer at the office.
Right.
or you're having nothing but face-to-face conversations with a person. So, and then as I became, a tween and a teen, it was like, oh, there's the AOL Instant Messenger and there's email. And then I had a beeper. Like I didn't get a cell phone until college because they didn't really exist in the form that we know it, certainly, but not even in their most like basic form until around that.
Right.
So like I graduated in 2000 for any, so there you go. Like cell phones were like just then becoming a staple in people's lives.
Wait, so we would go to and from school without ever letting people know if we made it to school or whatever. Like there was so many times, like even like kids getting hurt at school, right? You had to run into the school to call for help. Like,
literally yelling, somebody help, someone's outside. They broke their leg. Yeah. And then someone from the office uses a landline to call a parent, or if there's no one in the school, like I remember like we had payphones like right there in the school. And like, that's how we would communicate with parents or people who were going to pick us up or drop us off or bring us to places. And so, the more ways that became available for communication, the more complicated things became for me. Right. I mean, it's like the more of anything is going to make things more complicated. And so certainly for my anxious self, having added forms of communication became more pressure, right? For being constantly in connection, for not delaying in my response times to people and all of that jazz. So like this felt like a hamster wheel that I was stuck in. And now forget it. Like we're never getting off this wheel because here we are in a place now where there's social media, there's Messenger, there's so many different types of apps that people use to communicate. Like even just meeting people, like you met your husband through, a dating service that was all virtual, all online. It's like, I can look at it objectively and say like, those things are miracles. Like you and I right now, we're on Zoom together. It's like, I literally didn't know, like, I know you had a relationship with Zoom pre-pandemic. I did not. Like this was learning it all after the world shut down was so challenging for me. And it was like, now I'm forced to have this new, and forget about the tech, that's its own anxiety, but this new form of communication that is now available and people are going to start expecting me to interact with it. Right. And maybe I don't want to, I'm not ready to. And then it became a work thing too. It's like, now we're not only in your personal life, are you going to use this platform, but you're going to use it for work too. And you have to figure it out. Like you're going to be teaching classes on it. And so like the biggest thing is like, all of this comes down to expectations. Expectations for getting back to people. So intense. Everyone's view of communication and what's appropriate, not just the method, but like, via phone, call, text, email, social media, messenger, but how fast or slow, as we're saying, that is socially or like culturally acceptable. It's like there's a lack of communication too, as you mentioned, about how we feel about communication is different. The fear of being rejected, right? It's like this person hasn't responded because they're not interested in talking to me, or rejection of my preferences too. It's like, I expect a response within an hour because we all know that we have cell phones near us.
Right.
But then I've stopped keeping my cell phone near me. So then I needed to have clear sort of like messages for my friends and family and coworkers. Like, I'm going to be away from my phone for the next few hours. So if you don't hear from me, here's why. Right. And so, but it's been all such a active practice of like, just navigating what I want, what my desires are for communication, and then creating the boundaries needed for me not to lose my shit.
Right.
Because I was reaching the place of like, I'm overwhelmed by too many forms of communication and by the pressure and expectations of getting back to people.
Right.
And this was especially challenging and continues to be with my work and friendships because it feels impossible to narrow down like a single story because it's all so fluid. And it just stems from a deep desire to not disappoint and to try and show up for everyone in the way that I think or imagine that they need me to show up for them.
Right.
So it's like for some relationships, I know I can get away with not responding for hours at a time. And I'm like, okay, I can feel safe in my body. I'm in the middle of teaching. I'm not going to freak out about the fact that somebody just texted me because I know that person is going to be fine if I respond in an hour.
Yeah.
But then there are other people, especially if I read something quick that's like a piece of news, or it's something that's giving me anxiety reading it, or it's something important I need to know. And it's like, I wish I could respond right now, but I can't. Right. So then it's like, because of our attachment to devices and forms of communication too, I wind up having that anxiety of like, okay, not only can I not respond to this person right now, but I actually wish I could and I want to. And that's such a rare thing for me too. So it's like, it just feels like the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
And so, but here comes my nemesis.
Yeah.
My nemesis is the texting. It's called the texting. I've basically labeled it the texting.
Okay.
I hate texting.
And so like I might be, because you and I text. Let me ask some clarity here. Do you literally mean using your thumbs to hit keys, or do you mean like using iMessage and going back and forth with a person?
So it's depends on the situation. I hate the immediacy that I feel like texting. It's like unsaid. It's become unsaid, right? Like that the texting is the form of communication that's quick.
Yes.
And that the expectation is that you're going to see that text. You may not be able to answer your phone, right? Logistically. And most people, I think, would agree that, especially around our age and younger, don't want to or do not have the quote unquote time for whole conversations with people, especially if like you're in the middle of driving or in the middle of a work day, or, having a conversation on the phone is less convenient.
Yeah.
And now that we have this new way of getting a message to someone real quick, like feels like nothing but anxiety for me.
Right.
Like, and sometimes if I'm away from my phone for a while and then I open it and I see a notification that I've missed like 17 texts.
Yeah.
Whether it's from one person or 5 people.
Yeah.
I'm immediately like, I don't want to do this. I want to just put my phone away and walk away from it like forever.
Yes.
So like, I feel really overwhelmed by the texting.
Yeah. It's like intrusive. It's like
so intrusive.
And then it's like, because you should have your phone by you should be available to respond. Right. So it's like, that's what I'm hearing is like, texting has made it that we're always like on call. Right. And then it's like the intrusive bit of like, hey, I'm thinking of you right now. Let me say something. Right. Like,
and look, I get that sometimes there are things I need to get out that I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to text this person right now. Like, I'll text you. I'll be like, and we are 2 hours apart, you're in mountain time and I'm on Eastern time. And so like, I try to be mindful when I text you with something, even if it's like, I want to just make sure I say it to her before I forget, because that's usually why I'm doing it. Yeah. And so like, I'll wind up just like sending it anyway and hope that you don't get a notification that's loud while you're still sleeping.
Yeah. Which I don't.
In the middle of dinner or whatever. Right. So like, that's one of my boundaries too. It's like, I have my phone on silent 24 hours a day.
Me too. Yeah.
It's never on. I mean, the only time I have the sound on is if I am going to be in the middle of something and I know I need to receive a message and I'm going to need to respond to that message, or I know I'm expecting a call that I need to pick up and God forbid I step away or I'm in the bathroom. I want to at least know that the phone is ringing somewhere. So that way, anyway, but so there are like the little things that I've been able to come up with since I feel like the pressures, the pandemic, especially threw everything for a loop, because I feel like everyone felt the need to be in connection and conversation and communication more frequently because they were away from people physically.
Yeah.
And so like, I can objectively understand and sort of empathize with that. I didn't have a lot of those same feelings as an introverted extrovert or extroverted introvert or whatever, however you want to call me. But like, certainly I miss being in community with people in person for sure. And like, as time has gone on and as this pandemic has been raging for way longer than any of us hoped or wanted, I know I'm not speaking for myself only in that, but like, it's just become that much more annoying having to only talk to people via these methods of communication that really piss me off and stress me out.
Yeah.
So it's the texting. I hate it. If I have the choice, which most of the time I do, I do voice to text.
Yep.
And so that's been very helpful. I know that at first you were like, okay, I can't always respond to voice to text. And I appreciated you being like, it's not that I don't enjoy this form of communication from you, but I may not be able to provide that exact same form back. And I'm okay with that, right?
Yeah.
I'm okay with reading a text as opposed to listening to it.
Yeah.
And if I can't listen, I tell you, I can't listen to this right now. I'll listen to it as soon as I'm in a quiet place or whatever. And so like, there's that, but there's that back and forth, but like, that's been a big game changer for me is being able to just speak freely like I would on the phone call.
Yes.
Even if I don't have time for the phone call and neither does the person I'm talking to. Right.
Right.
So yeah, like I'm not saying I want to talk on the phone. I still prefer texting because I do believe that the immediacy is helpful to a certain extent. Like I can get out my thought, you can get out your thought. Where the stress comes in is it's all in my own head, right? It's like I should be responding faster. I'm unprofessional if I don't get back to a person, within a certain time frame. That counts for via email communication too. It's like, what's the timeline? Where's the contract for like expectations? Is it normal for me to be like, hey, person I'm interested in working with, when I respond to you within 24 hours, the expectation is that I hear from you in about the same amount of time, right? Like, I wish it was socially acceptable for me to say that to people sometimes.
Yeah. No, exactly. Right. It's like what, and, I think some of it also is like where we are in the United States, because in New York, in the Northeast, it is way more expected to respond in a more promptly manner than it is in California. Like for real, like that's people can take, like, so that's the other part is like culturally, where are you? And then what are those expectations? Cause I know I have the New York mentality. I send something out, you send it back in the same amount of time.
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
But in the West, it's a little bit more lax. Yeah.
Conditioning. It's our conditioning geographically. That's such a great point. And it's like when I'm on vacation, people don't necessarily expect me to get back to them. Right. It's like, I'm not saying we should all be on vacay time, although that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
But it's, as you said, it's going to be situation dependent, but it is also maybe geographically or culturally dependent too. It's like such an interesting way to think about it too.
Yeah.
So some of the ways here's just another like random funny one that came up when I was thinking about communication was just like, what kinds of forms of punctuation are acceptable if I'm talking to a person too via text or email? It's like, how many exclamation points can I put in this email without sounding unprofessional or like I'm a teen girl?
Yeah.
I like exclamation points. When I see them, I feel better.
Yeah.
I mean, do I want to see them at the end of every sentence? No. So I try to be mindful of it when I'm typing out my emails, but here's like the bullshit part about it too. Like I will sometimes count how many I have in an email communication. And if I'm talking to a friend or a family member or a coworker or someone that I'm like in business with or working with, it all varies and is different.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know Adam, for example, he's in sales. And so like, he'll get texts from customers sometimes. I'm like, is that an acceptable form of communication? Like it's a work phone. It's not coming to his personal phone. It comes to his, business provided phone. But still, it's like the fact that customer thought it was okay to text you at like 11 p.m.
Yeah.
Regardless of the on-call nature of your job, like it just seems he's not coming out to your house to sell you new equipment at 11 p.m. Right. So like, but like to me, that form of communication feels so wrong.
Yeah.
But that's my own perspective, right?
Yeah.
That's the way I view it. And clearly that person on the other end of that text doesn't view it that way.
Right.
And when Adam says to me, that's the job, right? Like, it's like, okay, like I have to accept that then, right? It's like, I guess that makes sense. It's like, but is it unsaid? Or was there explicit like language in your contract? Like you are going to receive potential emails or texts from people at all hours of the day. And here's a general response time that we'd like for you to have. It's like that language is definitely missing from our work life, especially, but I think in all forms of our lives.
Well, I mean, when you're saying this, it's like when we grew up, right? Like when we were kids, like we had those landlines and like, we knew that unless it was like an emergency, like no one made phone calls after like 9:30 PM. No one called other people. No one really called around dinner time unless it was important, right? There was like
or a telemarketer.
Yes. Right. And then, not to answer, right?
Right.
And then you get caller ID, right? And then you find out who's calling, right? Like, But there were these like unspoken agreements when we didn't have email, when we didn't have cell phones. And then all of a sudden we get like, AOL introduced to us, but like email's still not a big thing. So we're not like just constantly like fielding, 50 messages, 100 messages a day, like, whatever it is. And then from there, like email started to grow. Then we got cell phones, but cell phones, like we couldn't speak until after 9 if we wanted the free minutes, but then there was no texting. Right. And so then when do you call? And so it just like everything keeps evolving. So like, I know for me, it's like, oh my God, it's like, sometimes for me, it's like 10 o'clock here. And I'm like, can I text Margot? Because it's midnight for you. And sometimes I don't do it. And sometimes I'm like, well, I know she's a night owl. And also I know that she'll probably turn her phone off or on silent. So like, sometimes I do it and I'm like, oh my God, I hope I don't wake her. Right. But it's like all of these, is it different if it's a friend that does it? Is it different if it's like a colleague that does it? Is it different if it's a client that does it? And like, there's no communication about all of the boundaries or lack of boundaries now that technology has evolved so much.
Right. And here's the thing that came up for me when you just said all that. It's like, not only is technology evolving, but it's becoming infinite in more ways, right? It's becoming like more.
Yes.
It's not just that the technology is changing and becoming better for usage. It's that it's more forms of communication. It's more overwhelming stuff. It's more opportunities, air quotes, to connect with people, right? It's like this incessant need to be in community and connection all the time that is so exhausting. It was like, I remember when AIM came out, we were all glued to it. Like as teens, we were obsessed, which is why like I have a lot of compassion for teens today, right? Who are constantly wanting to be on their phone, because like that was us in just a milder form back in the day with a different form of communication. But it was the same thing. It was like being able to text people, but like, like I would get home from high school and I would jump on AIM immediately and talk to my best friend that I just saw 20 minutes ago. Like that was what we did. Right. And so it's that now I think we've reached a place in our lives, in our culture, not just in this country, but globally to a certain extent, where like the expectations for communication are more, but no rules are being laid out.
Right.
No one's actually communicating about the communication.
Right.
It's so counterproductive.
And that's, I mean, what you're saying is, one, like it's global now, right? We're all connected. So we're all in these different time zones, right? Then the other part is we are all like, the message is you need to be on standby. You need to be ready. But then the other part, I think, is that, you and I are independent contractors. And so in a sense, if we aren't prompt in our responses, we might lose the job to another contractor. So there's also that pressure too of feeling the need to be on call and be available, because it might impact our work life. Like
totally. Right. It's like, I've had that feeling where it's like, oh my God, what would have happened if I missed this email?
Yeah.
Right. What would have happened if like perfect example, like 2 weeks ago, one of my schools, I had texted it, the director, cause again, like it became acceptable that I can text this director. I honestly don't remember exactly how that came to be. I feel like she texted me out of nowhere and I was like, oh, okay. I guess this is an acceptable form of communication. So it's like a boundary was pushed, right. Or set in that way. And it was like, even if I wasn't okay with it, what am I going to do? Here she is on the phone. I'm not going to not respond because it's inappropriate.
Right.
So I respond, and that's one of the ways that we communicate. And it is very helpful and useful, especially for last minute situations. And so one of the classes suddenly, had to quarantine, and she'd forgotten to tell me that it couldn't come no longer at that particular time. I had to come a little bit later to go to the next group of kids that's available. And so it was like, what would have happened if I got in my car to drive there without getting this text message first? Right. It's like little things, little decisions are made surrounding the messages we receive too.
Yeah.
That wind up being big decisions. It's like, that's my money right there.
Right.
That's my time. Right. So like you said about being a contractor, like it's that added pressure of like, you better have that phone out, or that the ability to have your email ready too. And it's like, even just with types of devices, there's so many types of devices, and it's like, some are considered not as good, or they don't have as cool of features or whatever. And so like, maybe you're not going to get that message as fast. If you don't have 5G, then, you're screwed, right? It's like that mentality is so pressuring too.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you do? What do you do with all this?
I just crawl into a hole. No. Okay. So here are my tools for navigating. The first thing, which is basically my tool for literally every type of anxiety that I have, is noticing. It's becoming aware actively of my mind and body, understanding my triggers. When am I feeling agitated by the phone, right? What does feeling agitated by the phone feel like? For me, it feels like extreme tension in my chest. It feels like holding my breath. It feels like my shoulders being up all the way touching my earlobes. It feels like it's a general discomfort, like all over, like a rumbling in my belly. And so since I know that those are my triggers, I've practiced noticing them, right? Then I know, okay, you're irritated, you're agitated by the phone.
Yeah.
Then I typically set a timer for about 5 minutes to either wrap up what I'm doing and let people know that I'm going to be away for a while. Or if I'm not in the middle of communicating, just put the phone down and walk away from it. What that looks like is I literally, and like, as I mentioned before, it's always on silent. And so I won't be disturbed by notifications of any kind.
Yeah.
I leave it in the charger in our bedroom or somewhere else, in my bag, in the car, wherever I am. I'll just leave it and walk away from it completely. I try to come up with a time frame, right? And that way I can give that to people. And if I don't give that to people, I just have it in my head. Like, I need an hour. I need 3 hours.
Yeah.
I need 6 hours, right?
Yeah.
And creating that time and sticking to it. So that's my next step, is telling the people that I'm in regular communication with that I'll be away from my phone and for approximately how long, and then create the boundary and stick to it.
Yeah.
Right. Being consistent has been a game changer for me. And I've just felt so much lighter in my decision, because everyone I know, including people I work with and for, are very supportive and they understand. Right.
That's awesome.
And so and that might not work for everybody. Right. There might be some bosses or some people or some family that are like, that's not acceptable for me. And then that's a conversation you need to have.
Right.
And that might be uncomfortable and sticky, but it also may be worth it to protect your peace and your mental health. There's like the hard thing we have to do. And then there's like the thing we don't want to do, but it's the important thing we need to do.
Yeah.
And the final thing is just sending myself lots of self-compassion. It's okay that the phone bothers you.
Yes.
It's okay to step away from it and take care of yourself.
Yes.
You do not need to be at everyone's beck and call simply because they've sent you a text or an email and asked for you to respond, right? Like, your response time has to be within reason, maybe, depending. And that might be something you have to practice, like figuring out for yourself in your individual work life or family life or needs. For me, I've been able to strike this nice balance of letting people know. I'll take that 5 minutes once I'm agitated by the phone. Take that 5 minutes, wrap up all the things I'm doing, let the people that I know I might hear from, that I won't be available for the next little bit.
Yeah.
And so that way the expectations are there and they're clear. And I've actually had a couple people tell me, I appreciate you letting me know about how long it's going to be before I can talk to you again, or before I can reach back out, because then I feel like we're all safe with the knowledge of like what's to be expected from you or me.
Totally.
Even if you're not happy with it. Right. Even if you wish that I were available right now, there's a level of respect there that I feel very grateful to have. So yeah, those are my navigation strategies. I know they may seem like obvious or really simple, but like sometimes the most obvious and simple things are the hardest things for us to
leaving
tackle.
your phone in your bag. I'm not there yet. I mean, I can leave my phone in silent. I can leave it, but
Sure.
So you say simple, but it doesn't mean easy, no.
Right. Like, it's simple to just drop my phone in my bag and look the other way. It's not an easy thing to do or a comfortable thing. Well, for me, it is.
Well,
You'll get there, baby. You'll get there.
I mean, I can leave my phone. Just, I don't know. In my bag feels so uncomfortable. I don't know why I have to sit with that one. But what I will say, is that you and I have communicated around texting and stuff. And I think that we've been really clear. And so, first of all, like, you will leave me a voice memo. And I've said to you, hey, sometimes you leave me voice memos and I don't remember everything you said. So I'm happy to receive them. I enjoy them, but also like, don't hold me accountable if I forget something. Right. So like clear communication right there.
Boom.
And also like, I know when I text you, because I know what you're practicing, I like I can't think of a time like in so long that I expect an instant reply. And sometimes I even preface it like, no worries on responding or no rush. But like, that is actually my like message before I text you all the time. It's like, when I text you, I am not expecting an instant. If I expected an instant, I would be like, Margot, 50 exclamation points. I need you right now. And like, I would say that. Right. But because I know what you're working on, when you don't reply, right, I'm not like, oh my God, she's mad at me, or, oh my God, something's happened. Like, I don't have those things. It's like, I'll hear from her when I hear from her, and everything is okay.
Everything's okay. Right. So it's like that back and forth, the give and take of explicit communication. Like, and I'm glad you brought up the piece about like, because if you don't save the voice text, they go away in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And so you may not hold that all in your brain, and you shouldn't be expected to. And I do not expect you to. And so I think that's such an important reminder. It's like, this has to be a two-way co-decision, right? And so like, the person you're letting know what your boundaries are, what your needs are surrounding communication, doesn't have to accept right, your needs for that, but they do have to respect it if they want to be in community and relationship with you. Right. So like, that's my big takeaway I want for the warriors. It's like, you can be in charge of creating those clear expectations and boundaries. You have to then take accountability for relaying all those things, even if it's uncomfortable to those people.
Right.
And then if they express that they're not okay with these new boundaries that you've set, you have a choice to make.
Yeah.
You can either not accept it, and I understand that it bothers you, but you have to respect it. Or this is something deeper we have to explore. Can we still be in community with each other? Can we still have a working relationship if we can't respect each other's boundaries surrounding communication?
Right. That's information right there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Right. These are red flags.
Yeah.
So I'm dying to know. I know you've shared so much, a little bit about how you feel too, but like, did any of this resonate with you?
Yeah. I mean, like, all of this resonated. And so I won't even like say what my form of communication was as a kid, because it was exactly yours.
Right.
It was the landline, talking on the phone, AIM, all that good stuff. And what it is now is exactly the same. There's talking, there's texting, there's email, there's social media like Instagram. And I feel a lot of the same pressures. But I feel like some of the pressures, and I'm sure you relate to this, are different, right? So like an email for a work gig feels more pressure than like an email from a friend.
Totally.
Right? Texts from friends feels different than texts from my mom, right? And so when you and I talked about doing this episode, a story popped up in my head, and I asked my mom for permission to tell this story because I just, so this is what came up when we talked about pressure and communicating. Aside from everything you said about how with technology evolving, now we're always on call, right? Like, that is the feeling, and it can be very intrusive, and it's like, where's my time? And right. I feel like I had a better relationship with my phone until my dad got sick. And of course, texting was still pretty big, but it wasn't like as big. And I was on Facebook, but I wasn't on Instagram. So like, things have shifted as well. But when my dad got sick, I felt I needed my phone on me all the time. And I always needed to check whenever there was a text to know if he was okay. Right. Sure. And this was like early on when he was first diagnosed with cancer, and he was going for chemo and all of that. And then when he passed, I ended up like moving back home with my mom because my brother got ill. And so again, I always felt this pressure of having my phone on me to make sure my brother was okay. Right. And so the story is, there was this constant pressure of being available to my mom and in some parts to my family because of like, is everyone okay? And so one day I was actually, I was taking the bus down to the city. I was having a casual lunch with someone I worked with in one of the schools. And my mom was like, just, text me when you get to lunch or whatever, and, I'm a 30-year-old, what am I, 34 at this time, 34-year-old woman, right? I understand I moved back home with my mom. I understand all that, right? Yeah. But it's like, text me when you get there. And it's like, okay. Okay. We just had a lot of loss in our family.
I'm so guilty of that.
I'm guilty of it too, but so I get to the city. The bus had run late. I'm waiting to, I think, catch the subway to get where I needed to go to meet this person for lunch. I'm running late. I get to the lunch place and I sit down and I'm talking and I'm having conversation and this and that. And basically I forgot to text my mom. So my mom got worried. And the thing is, like, she had a lot of loss because we lost my dad, my brother's ill, and my grandma who's my mom's mom, had passed. So I understand my mom wanting to know I'm safe. Like, I totally get it.
Yeah.
But her anxiety manifested into her emailing the person I was having lunch with to see.
Wow.
Yeah. And this was like kind of a business thing.
Oh my.
So we had to have some serious talks. But what that also did was made me feel more pressure to be available to my mom because I didn't want my mom to experience the discomfort that I could imagine she was experiencing. And so it made me feel more pressure to always be available to my mom's texts because I didn't want her to worry.
Yeah.
But then that also manifested in the way where, okay, mom, then when I text you, if you don't answer, then I'm going to worry. And wonder what happened and drive myself nuts with it too. And get upset when you take your sweet time responding. Right.
Yeah.
And so we've, this happened, I think back in like 2017 or 2018. So my mom and I have healed from that and we can joke about it, but I still, and she knows this because we've talked about this, I still have that pressure of always being available to be the good child and the good daughter to my mom, right? And making sure that, like, when she texts, like, the moment I see it, I respond so she doesn't worry. And that's a hard one. That's why I can't leave my phone in the bag, right? That's a hard one. What if something bad happens, right? I need to be available to know, even though now I live in Colorado. So, like, stuff to think about. But so that's really what comes up with me with communication. When it comes to friends and like texting and stuff, I'm much more like, if I read it and I have the space to respond, I respond. If I read it, I don't have the space, I tell myself I'll respond later.
Right.
Or if I don't have any time to respond, I don't read it until it's a good time.
Yeah.
DMs on Instagram, unless it's work related, I don't respond until I have the space for that.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that form of communication is one of my least favorite forms.
Same.
And it's just like an extension of work. And I figure, like, if it's super important, they will email me. And then, like, the only other thing that really comes up when I think about the pressure of communicating is I've become one of those people that really enjoys texting as my primary form of communication with people that don't live in my house. Right. Like, Dan and I love communicating it face to face. But one of the funny narratives that I've noticed I've picked up is that I tell myself I don't like talking on the phone, or I tell myself I don't have time to talk on the phone. And then I remember, it's so funny, but Anthony and I, like our previous guest, Anthony, we maybe talk like once a month or once every couple of months. And we end up talking for like 2 to 3 hours, which like brings me back to my high school days. I'm like, oh yeah, I still can do it. Right.
Yeah.
And it's always enjoyable. We're not like sitting on the phone, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Right. It's like back and forth, engaged conversation. But every time I hang up with Anthony, I'm always like, oh, why do I think I don't like talking on the phone? Because I don't feel like I can do it on a daily basis. I don't feel like I can have phone conversations every single day. I don't know how people have time for that. Good for you if you figured it out. But I do realize that when it's not super often, I really enjoy it, you know? And the last thing I'll say about all of this is like, I'm always amazed. Like my mom has this amazing, huge network of friends. Like she has friends from elementary school. She's still super good friends with. Yeah. She has friends, and none of them live in her area. She has friends from the camp she worked in, and still super good friends at the, like with the people. That's how we like met our previous guest, Jesse, is because my mom and his dad have been friends since they worked together when they were like 15 or 16. Right. And they did not grow up with this technology, and they don't have to speak every single day. And yet they are all really, really good friends. They all show up for each other. They all support each other. You know, they're just this really strong network, and it's all different groups for her. She has, you know, her community in Woodstock, and then her community from college, and her community. And it just is like, it reinforces to me that like, we don't have to be in touch every single day to be friends. If we have that bond, we can see through the day-to-day to remember that bond and remember like what our true friendship is, what it truly is. And we can still show up for each other. And it doesn't have to be like a tit for tat where like, oh my God, you didn't respond to my text, so now I'm mad at you. You know, it's like,
it feels petty.
Yeah. Right. Because people did it before.
Right. But that's part of the problem though, right? Is because it's the immediacy of texting.
Yes.
The understanding that the person has the phone within a few feet of them, most likely.
Yes.
Right. Especially if you're, you know, younger than 50 years old. Right. Let's just say that. So yeah, I just think that the expectations are still going to be so different for you, depending on the age you grew up in, right? What were you used to? What were the acceptable forms of communication for those friends versus those friends, for work people versus family? Like, and first of all, my parents are just like that. My parents have friends from, and people from their lives from since they were little kids, and my parents are in their mid 70s. They're about to hit their 56th wedding anniversary in a couple of days. Yes. Congrats, mom and dad. 56 years. Crazy. But it's like, and they all talk to them on the phone. That's their primary source of communication is phone conversations.
Yes.
See these people all the time, especially not through a pandemic at their ages. Like, and they're not using Zoom or any of the other things either. They're just having phone conversations with each other, and they're not often. But like you said, when you talk to Anthony, it's like they can be on the phone for hours with people. Even if they talk to them once a week, which is a lot, kind of, you know, but like I so related. There are certain people in my life that I talk to on the phone still, and it's always enjoyable. And we can talk freely back and forth as if like we haven't seen each other in years, but saw each other yesterday somehow at the same time.
Right.
And then there are other people where it's like, I know that conversation's going to go and it's going to be pretty short. Otherwise it's going to get uncomfortable. So I'm better with texting with those people or making a plan to see those people.
Yeah.
Again, pre-pandemic, but we're heading back in the right direction, hopefully. But like, you know,
or like, I feel like you and I, you know, we know that we can talk too much. So sometimes when we want to talk on the phone, we're like, we need to keep it short. Let's set a timer. Let us meet our goals. And we'll make a plan for a longer chat another time. And so I feel like there's also like that too. It's like, you know, your people, and it's like, if we don't have the time and the space to talk, we set the goals to get the thing done, and then plan another time to have the fuller chat.
Right. Even when we're podcasting or when we're on Instagram live, right? Like we try really hard to stick to a timeline. It's sometimes really tricky.
Yes.
That's why all of our episodes are very different time frames. Yes. There's no consistent pattern. Like some podcasts are like, all right, you're pretty much going to get 30 minutes out of those people every week. For us, it's different. And with our guests, it's the same as true. We've had guest interviews under an hour and some that are almost 90 minutes. So it's like, it all depends on our communication style and our needs in that moment, or how much we're enjoying a back and forth too. Right. I'm glad you brought that piece up. It's like, you can fully engage and enjoy a form of communication, right? That's mutually accepted by you and the other party. Right. So it's like, I think it's just an important takeaway. It's like, all these forms of communication are amazing miracles. They're also pains in the asses.
Yeah.
So like you need to figure out, warriors, what you want your relationship to these devices and forms of communication to be.
Yeah.
And then if you have the power to learn what the people in your life, how they view these forms of communication, take the time to figure it out, right? Come up with what's going to be mutually beneficial and feel supportive to you, both of you, all parties involved. So that way you can have successful, wonderful, impactful, nourishing relationships with people going forward.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I feel like it made it sound like I hate communicating with people.
No.
I'm getting that sense of like, I spoke a lot about like my disdain for like so much. And like, so I just want to drive home that you can have a complicated relationship with all of these forms of communication and the pressures that can come with them all.
Yes.
And it's okay. Have that self-compassion.
I just heard that you didn't really like the intrusiveness. Like I didn't hear that you know, like that you hated all forms. I just like being on call is a lot. It's a lot. We didn't grow up having to always be on call. We could just be.
Right. There's no space for that built into life anymore with a device always attached to you.
Yeah.
It's very tricky. Well, warriors, we hope that you will take some time today or this week to reflect on how you feel about communication and what it feels like to always be available. Do you have boundaries surrounding communication? Have you explored what you feel like your priorities are surrounding communication, what your needs are, what feels good for you? Do those things need to change if things don't feel good?
Yeah.
Right. Can you take some ownership over your feelings about communication and its various forms and pressures and actively work towards making a change that might be more suitable for you and your needs? Yep. And the same thing for those people that you might be in community with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Abby, do you have a win of the week?
Win of the week. I do. So this is coming out much later, so it's going to be different. But I just celebrated my 1-year anniversary of my bedtime meditation, bedtime tools for kids. That was
everybody
on Insight. Yeah, it is for everybody. I've had some grown-ups say they like it.
Yes.
It was published a little over a year ago on Insight Timer, and on the 1-year mark, I hit 1,000 students on Insight Timer.
Woo!
That was very exciting. And by the time that this episode comes out, I will also have hit 1,000. I know this students in my teen course, which has been out a little bit longer than the bedtime, but I knew the bedtime was super good. I just knew it. So anyway,
more of a need for that, I think.
Yeah. Well, different. Yeah.
Different need.
Different. Yeah. Yes. So, so I got my 1,000 students. It's really nice to know that 1,000 different people have listened and hopefully these have been helpful to them. And that's my win.
It's amazing. So cool. Just knowing the number, right? I think numbers can be very intimidating, but it's always special to hit a milestone, and why not celebrate that? Love it.
Thanks.
Huge win. Huge win. And those people are so lucky. Everyone go to Abby's website, abigailwilbur.com. Sign up for some teen courses, some bedtime meditation courses. And it really is for everybody, y'all. It doesn't have to be for your kids. We do it together.
Grown-ups email me how it's helpful too.
Yeah, everyone needs sleep techniques.
Yep.
Helpful methods of sleep. Okay, warriors, we love you so much. Thank you for listening this and every week. If you are interested in connecting, you can join our Instagram fam. We're at Anxiety Warriors Podcast. You can shoot us an email at anxietywarriorspodcast@gmail.com. Share with us your topic ideas, your wins of the week. If you think you'd love to be a guest on our show, let's connect. Let's learn a little bit more about you and your extremely important, valid story of anxiety and your journey. And if you have 2 seconds, as we're saying, we know you have your annoying, lovable, maybe awesome, maybe obsessed with phone, probably nearby, if not right in your hand right now. Smash that 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Smash it. Leave us a review. If you're listening on Spotify, you can also hit 5 stars over there now. Thank you, Spotify. And you can jump on in the show notes. We have our link for our Threadless shop where you can get your Anxiety Warriors podcast swag, tote bags, mugs, and shirts and hoodies and journals and all the fun merch.
Yes.
So Warriors, thank you for being here. We love you.
Yes. Thank you all so much for going on this journey with us. We're so grateful you're here.
Till next time.